Last week I did a quickie about forgiveness, and I compared forgiveness to an octopus, just lots of legs, lots of moving parts. And I shared the story in my head about legs 1 and 2. And today I continue that story with legs 3, 4, and 5. Check it out. When I use the word forgiveness, I don't mean condoning shitty behavior. I don't mean accepting the way somebody has treated you as okay. I don't mean relationships don't need to be repaired or, sometimes relationships need to end. Forgiveness really has nothing to do with any of that. Right now, forgiveness to me is about me. And it feels selfish almost to say it that way, but I'm learning that that's really true for me. Forgiveness is about not being angry because I don't want to be angry. And, I think about being young, the story in my head about forgiveness. I was raised Southern Baptist. There was a lot of chat about forgiveness, a whole lot of sermons about asking for forgiveness, a whole lot of consequences if forgiveness is not sought. I was raised when I would harm my brother that I had to tell him I was sorry. As a matter of fact, to be completely honest, I was raised to not say I'm sorry, because that somehow indicated to my psyche that I was not worthy. So my mother asked my brother and I to say, I apologize. She went on to ask us to tell the other person what exactly we were apologizing for, and then to kind of confirm or validate, promise really the other person that you wouldn't repeat that behavior again, that you'd make a change, basically. I was raised in a system where apologies were, kind of 3-parted. I was wrong. This is why I was wrong, and I won't do it again. And then forgiveness was a really key factor in heaven versus hell. Okay? So that's kind of where the stories begin for me about forgiveness. So I am well into adulthood and, several relationships deep before I truly realized that not everybody was raised like that. Right? Not everybody was taught this multi-step apology forgiveness system. Not everybody was even asked to say they were sorry. Not everybody thinks forgiveness is this huge thing that is necessary. So you got to keep in mind the story you have in your head about forgiveness when you're looking at this forgiveness octopus, right? Last week, I shared an experience I had where I went and met a priest, and my definition of forgiveness shifted dramatically. And it became for me the opposite of anger. And lately, I've been thinking about this a lot because lately I want to exercise forgiveness. I'm giving myself permission to forgive. So I'm revisiting that memory of that priest who taught me so much that day. Anywho, in the years since I met the priest, the thing about life is the longer you live, the more practice you have, the more opportunities for practice you have. And forgiveness is not excluded from that. So in the years since I met the priest, I've had lots of opportunities to practice forgiveness. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm great at it, but I am better than I used to be for sure. And I've learned a few things. And lately forgiveness for me has kind of been, kind of a 3-part deal. All of them being difficult, all of them being work. And the day that I met that priest, I was thinking about forgiveness as somebody else having to work for me to then forgive them. And that day I learned that forgiveness is about me doing the work. Anywho, so the first step for me right now, the third leg of this forgiveness octopus, if you will, is stop doing harm. Stop doing harm. And that's really, really hard when I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm afraid, I feel exposed. And if I am hurt, I want to hurt somebody back. Okay, I want to get revenge. I want to be vengeful. I want to be mean. I want to be aggressive. So the problem with that is I don't want to be seen as an asshole. Okay. And so if I act out on these hurt feelings and I hurt others because I want to punish them and hurt them and harm them, I'm the asshole. I don't want to be an asshole. So using my ego for good, if nothing else other than my ego doesn't want me to be seen as an asshole, I would like to stop harming this person that I've been angry at, that I feel hurt by, threatened by. That's step one. And that takes some work. It takes some practice. For sure, because sometimes I can lash out verbally and it just comes out of nowhere, man. I myself am just as shocked as the other person because I didn't feel angry. I wasn't thinking about anything. And then all of a sudden, wham, bam, thinking, man, and blah, 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 out it comes. I'm like, Jesus, Amy, whew, you must still be a lot angry about that because that was super hostile. I just shock myself sometimes. So understand to decide to not be hurtful is step one. It is a decision, a conscious decision. And sometimes it takes some practice, some work. The next leg for me, the next step for me in forgiveness is also very difficult, but something I am a fan of, and that's trying to see something from somebody else's perspective. And when I'm harmed, when I feel wronged, hurt by somebody else, one of the things that I go to in my head is like, oh my God, I would never do that to them. How could they possibly do that to me? Right? Because we love each other. We're important to each other. Whatever. I would never do that to them. And then I have to remind myself, I've never been in their shoes. I could never recreate their exact circumstances. I judge people by the decisions they make, yet I never know the options they thought they had available to them. So step two is looking at the situation from their perspective. And this is difficult sometimes when I'm angry. This is difficult when my ego is in the way. This is difficult because my ego doesn't love it when I might possibly see something about myself that I don't like, aka my part in the situation. It requires some emotional intelligence, some fortitude, some courage, a lot of courage to look at things from somebody else's perspective, because I might end up seeing me in a light that I don't particularly care for. But in my experience, I have to admit, I want to admit, that is part of the forgiveness process. It is easier to see things from somebody else's perspective, even when I don't like what I see about myself, after I have decided to quit causing harm. And 9 times out of 10, when I do take an honest moral inventory, an honest look at the scenario, an objective look, I have zoomed out and looked at the scenario from the other person's perspective, I see their humanness, their flawed humanness. I see where they screwed up, yeah. And I can also see where I might have done the same thing given those exact same circumstances. It brings me back to one of my favorite words, maybe. Yeah, maybe I'd have done that same jacked up, stupid, asinine, massive error. Maybe so. And once I can relate to their humanness, their flawed humanness, from a perspective of my own flawed humanness, the relationship changes in that moment. I am no longer an adversary. They are no longer my enemy, somebody who has wronged me. Now I'm like, shit, here's just a fellow human being, winging it, trying to make it through the world, who has just fucked up. That's it. It allows me to have a little bit of compassion, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of patience. And lo and behold, a little bit of forgiveness, because the emotional aspect of forgiveness, the part where I can remember whatever happened and not feel angry all over again, not feel wronged, afraid, threatened, exposed, whatever it was, when I can emotionally forgive, I can then see it as just this memory. It's like, damn, yeah, that did happen. Yeah, that sucked. But not see it as a trigger and feel all that same shit all over again, right? Triggered. We hear about that shit a lot. Maybe when I use that term, that's an indicator that there's room for me to emotionally forgive, to let go. Maybe forgiveness and letting go is the same thing. I am not exactly sure. It seems so right now. If I'm going to stop harming you, if I'm going to see you as just a fellow human with the same flaws, the same drama, the same fears and insecurities, and you made poor choices just like me, then I can forgive you and not keep telling the story over and over in my head, not keep stirring the pot and creating this havoc, this emotional response to the memories. I can just be like, damn, that sucked. Maybe that's the forget part. Forgive and forget. We're going to forget all the feelings that I felt back then. I don't need that shit anymore. The alarms went off. I paid attention. Let that go. Turn off the alarms. Forget the feeling part. That's emotional forgiveness. It's hard work. It's hard work. But, being angry is hard work. Being scared is hard work. Everything is work. Pick your work.